I think everybody absolutely experiences isolation. If you work from home, everybody needs to get out and take care of themselves and do the self-care. But I think when you have, whether it's just regular depression or bipolar disorder or anxiety disorder, it can add a whole new level.
That was Jennifer Farley, and this is episode number 196 of the Chopped Podcast. Hey there, how are you doing today? I am so glad you've taken the time to join me today. I'm Marley McMillan with the blog Namely Marley, and I am your host of the Chop Podcast, where we're talking about a lot of things, including entrepreneurism, productivity, mindset, social media, and even some technical things like SEO. All of this as it relates to a passion for food blogging and influencing. Today's discussion is focusing on mindset. Jennifer Farley of the site Savory Simple is here, and we're talking about a sensitive topic that really doesn't get discussed enough: mental health, especially as it relates to your well-being as a food blogger. So let me give you a little backstory. Jennifer and I are in a Facebook group where someone specifically brought up the issue of mental health. I believe, if I remember correctly, this individual had clinical depression and was suffering through bouts of self-doubt as a blogger. What happened next was simply unbelievable. So many bloggers, hundreds, responded, sharing their own details of anxiety disorder, bipolar, clinical depression, self-doubt, and more. It was an amazingly supportive and enlightened discussion thread. That's why Jennifer and I decided to have this discussion today, to shed some light on a topic that's been, I'd like to say the word taboo for far too long. I can speak from personal experience because my brother was diagnosed with schizophrenia and manic depression at the time. Now they refer to it as bipolar. And he eventually lost his life to that. It was a really troubling time for my family. There weren't a lot of resources back then for my parents to help my brother. And it was just, like I say, it was a very troubling time. And ever since he died, I've noticed kind of what I would call a sense of shame in talking about it. People just don't want to talk about mental health issues. And I think that's not just in my family. I think it's pervasive in our society. And I think it's hung around far too long. It's almost as if when a person has diabetes, it's an okay medical condition to talk about. But someone has bipolar, it's almost like it's an unwritten rule that they should keep that to themselves. But one thing I've learned over the years is that things only get better when they're brought out into the light. That's why I'm so pleased to have Jennifer on the show today, and she's talking about her personal experience with mental health and how it has impacted her as a blogger. She's also created a first ever resource for bloggers dealing with mental health. She's called the site justonepost.net, and you can go to the site for resources and contributor stories on how to deal with mental health issues. This is an amazing resource and provides such a great opportunity for people to share their stories. I just love this so much. So can reading stories from other people's lives dealing with mental health really be enough? Of course not. There are so many layers to mental health issues like medicine and therapy. But I do think this conversation and this dialogue and this community talking about mental health and the stories that they're going through, I think reading that and being a part of that conversation can be so helpful. To know that you're not alone in dealing with struggles that you're going through, I think it's one of the first steps to healing in my book. Today's discussion with Jennifer is such a thoughtful conversation. It's full of great tidbits and great resources about mental health alone, but we also, Jennifer is a trained chef, so we also get into recipe development and a little bit about how Jennifer responds to comments about recipes. So there's a lot going on in today's discussion, and I think you're going to find so much about it that you love. I definitely did. I enjoyed this conversation a lot, and I think you will too. So let's get straight to it. Here's today's featured conversation with Jennifer Farley. Hey everyone, I'm happy to have on the show today Jennifer Farley. She's with the site Savory Simple. Hey Jennifer, welcome to the Chop Podcast.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
Well, I'm so glad to have you here. I can't believe how long that we've been in some of the same circles, and yet I think this is the first time I've actually talked with you. Is that right?
Yeah, we've talked on Twitter and stuff, but not in person.
Yeah, so I'm really excited. This makes me so happy. And you're one of those people that your blog has been around a while, is that right?
Yeah, I started it over 10 years ago. It's hard to believe.
I know, isn't it? It's like, what's happened here?
How did that happen?
How does that happen? So I would love to hear a little bit about your blog and what it was that caused you to start Savory Simple.
Sure. I started it back in September of 2009, right after seeing the movie Julie and Julia and reading the
Ah,
book.
yes.
And I have a feeling that's when a lot of blogs started.
Yeah. Yes.
We all read the book and saw the movie and thought, I can do that. That looks like so much fun.
Yeah.
And it was right around that time that I was also really not happy with my career. I had been working a 9 to 5 job for about 10 years. And my back hurt from sitting all day. And I just was bored with it. And I wanted to do something different. And I had been thinking about going to culinary school, but it kind of seems like, I don't know, maybe it was a fantasy. And then I found a blog. This was so early in the food blogging days. We didn't have social media the way that we do now. So I don't even remember how I came across this little food blog that I don't think exists anymore. That was this woman talking about her experience in culinary school. And once I found it, I read it. I binge read it. And I decided, I think she and a couple other factors were sort of what gave me that final kick I needed to go to school. And I decided to start the blog really to document my journey through culinary school. And so it was a very, very different thing at the beginning. It was kind of a diary of culinary school with a lot of complaining about how hard it was and recipes in the middle of it that were very vague because we were taught to be vague in school with our recipes.
Really? I wonder why that is.
I wish if I knew now if I knew then what I knew now, or I would go back and redo all of my school recipes with as much detail as I write them now, because I think they're training us in school to work in restaurants, and we just have to have these things memorized, and it has to be by instinct, and we're not really supposed to be following recipes. So we were supposed to turn in these almost concepts of recipes that are really unacceptable on the internet.
Absolutely. In fact, it's so interesting that you say this because I was just talking the other day about how recipes have evolved over time. Like I have some of my mom's old cookbooks and they're nothing fancy. They're just like somebody in the community put together these recipes and they're so non-specific. It's not even funny. Like I
Mm-hmm.
feel like nowadays we're like hand feeding. We're like going to so much detail. It's almost ridiculous. And yet, here we are.
Yeah. I have the same books, and then I have recipes from my mother who writes the recipes kind of the way she talks, so they're very, very detailed. Um, so there's a little bit of everything, but I have those exact same vague cookbooks.
Well, I'm so glad to hear you say this though, because I feel like there's a back of my mind, like, God, I wish I would have gone to culinary school because then I probably would have gotten more discipline as far as how to write very detailed recipes. So now you've cured me of that.
Yeah, it's not fun.
Yeah. But culinary school is really expensive too. So I mean, and it's a huge sacrifice on your part.
It really was. It was hard to go from the comfort of a salary job with
Yeah.
insurance to paying for a school that was training me to go work in a field that was going to pay me minimum wage without insurance.
Yes.
But luckily, I had a very supportive boyfriend at the time, who's now my husband, who kind of we figured out a way to make it work together. We were already living together, and you really have to want it to go through that process. I don't think I would do it again, but I think it's probably more than most people need to do.
Right. I mean, it is pretty exciting though. I mean, talk about having a dream and pursuing it and following it through to the greatest degree. I just love that story.
Yeah, I kind of do too, because I had no idea what I was going to do. I knew that I didn't want to work in restaurants, and I had no idea that the blog that I was starting at the same time as a diary was going to turn into my career. And it's just funny
Yes.
how things work out.
What did you do before?
I was a network administrator at my father's photography company. It's a children's photography company. So that's where I got my first digital camera. And I spent a lot of time when I wasn't taking care of the office computers, doing a lot of the Photoshop editing. So I always like to tell people that I got a lot of practice later for photoshopping out crumbs by photoshopping a lot of boogers.
I'm a network administrator. My heart goes to you. That's a complicated job, but I guess that set you up for the technology side of your blog too, right?
Yeah, everything really sort of came together in perfect harmony to shape the food blogging because I had the photography, I had the technical stuff, which definitely has I've helped with WordPress, even though that's its own beast.
Yes.
And yeah, and then culinary school, so everything just sort of melded together.
Did you always have a love of cooking? Is that something that, has been true throughout your life?
Not to the extent of some people I know. I don't think this is where I ever thought that I would end up, or I would have ended up here sooner. I liked cooking with my grandmother and my mother, but I really didn't have a natural instinct for it, which is part of why I decided to go to school. And it was really, I think, the rise of Food Network and
Yeah.
Food Memoirs and the Travel Channel and Anthony Bourdain and all those things that just sort of got me really paying attention and wanting to be really great. And I love being taught. I love being a student. So the love of cooking wasn't necessarily always there. But I did always love to eat.
Yeah. Oh, that's a good one to have too as a food blogger.
Yeah.
I'm curious if you ever find this to be true because I feel like even as much detail as I go into with a recipe, there are still as much as I love this learning, I wonder like how that translates into teaching. Like I feel like there's constantly people that have questions about certain parts of a recipe that it's sometimes like they have a problem that I have a hard time recreating, and I feel like God, if I would have just gone to culinary school, I would have that answer. But I don't think that's true. I think there are some questions about a complicated recipe that are, I don't know, it's really difficult to answer those questions. Do you feel that way?
Oh, I think it's so difficult to answer those questions when we weren't there. And
Yes.
I was just thinking about this last night, actually, and I've just come to the conclusion that a lot of times when we can't get down to the bottom of what's going on while we're trying to help someone, that they measured one of the ingredients wrong.
Yes.
Because I've done it. I think we've all done it. And if
Yep.
you can't figure out why something's not coming together, you've either, a lot of times it's probably just human error. It's not, it's, you
Yes.
think you've got everything. We're trying to come up with these fancy reasons of maybe why it didn't work when it could be someone used a tablespoon of something instead of a teaspoon of something.
Oh, I have been guilty of that for sure many times. And also, oven temperatures can be off. There's so many
Oh, yeah.
variables that we can't be, they're using old baking powder. You just never know?
I have a whole list of questions that I go
Uh,
through when I'm trying to help people troubleshoot their recipes. And sometimes they swear up and down that they did everything right. And so there's nothing I can do at a certain point.
Oh, I can't tell you what a relief it is to hear you say that because it's one of those things about food blogging that I feel like can really just it can send me into a bad spot because I just feel like I want to be that helpful. I want to be knowledgeable about everything, every detail of the recipe. And if I just knew more, I'd be able to answer their questions. And if I can't, then I'm a failure. That's kind of where I go sometimes.
I bet so many of us go there. I
I
think
think you're
that's just
right.
human nature. It's my
Yeah.
fault. As soon as I get a bad
Yes.
review on a recipe, my initial reaction is always my recipe's wrong. It's not
Yeah.
what did they do wrong and how can I help them fix it? It's oh no, what did I do?
Oh my God, that's exactly where I go. Oh, I feel so much better just talking with you already. That's the place I go to. Like, I am a failure. I can't figure this out. What's wrong with me? And
Yeah.
sometimes I actually go and recreate the recipe just to make sure. And then it's right. So I don't know how to help them. That's what's really frustrating.
That's happened so many times. And I've gotten to a place where I just have to remind myself that
Yep.
to have faith in my content.
Yes. Oh, that's so true. That's a good point. And I love your point about having a troubleshooting list. Like for example, a meringues might be an example where, they can be kind of tricky. And so having some, like, is your oven temperature correct, or having some troubleshooting can help.
It really, it saves a lot of time.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. So photography sounds like you already had an interest in photography. So you were kind of working on that before you even started your blog.
Yeah. I had had an interest in that since college, and I took back then was film photography, and I loved it. I loved the dark room, and
Mm.
when I went to work for my father's company, they were still all on film, and I was there for the transition to digital, and I didn't realize how much I was going to ultimately end up loving photography because I did not like children's photography. I tried.
Yes. You mean taking pit portraits?
Yeah, that takes a
Yeah,
special kind of patience.
I think so too.
Um,
Yes.
s- but they gave me a hand me down camera, so I got to start experimenting, and that plus learning to use Photoshop and Lightroom got me was definitely gave me a head start when it was time to start food blogging. But don't go back and look at the first photos on my blog because they're not really indicative of that.
There's always that journey that we go through.
There's a journey.
Yes. I think even as you evolve in your photography journey, I still think there's things, like even things that we did last year, that I want to reshoot because I've
Oh
changed
yeah.
even since then.
So many times the
Yes.
lighting wasn't right that day, or
Yep.
just something didn't look right, and something that I spooned on top of it, or I could have gotten a cheesy shot or something. Yeah.
Yes. Or
Yeah,
why didn't
we're
I melt that cheese a little bit more or something,
right.
yes, all of those things. Yeah.
Right.
Or the chocolate chips could have been a little bit more melty, things like that. Yeah.
Mhm.
But I think everybody, if you don't know Jennifer already, which you probably do, you should go check out Savory Simple, because your photography is just, it is the cream of the crop. It's beautiful. I can always, when I look at a photo, I can tell it's yours.
Oh, thank you.
Yes. And you've taught photography. I mean, you've you've gone to conferences and you've actually taught food photography.
Yeah. I've taught a workshop here at my house. I've also did a Photoshop session at Mediavine Chicago last year, and I'll teach one-on-one classes sometimes. I love teaching photography. It's fun to me.
It is so fun. And do you also do just the photography, or do you the styling as well?
The photography, the styling, the editing, the whole shebang.
Oh, I love that because, I mean, I think somebody could have an area where they excel in one, but, for example, I think styling is one that everybody has a little bit of struggle with. It's like, what do I
Mhm.
do with this shot? How do I make it look even great, really great? Yeah.
Absolutely. And that's something where working in restaurants probably did help a little bit, not necessarily with styling the shots, but one of the questions I used to get a lot was, how do you get your ice cream scoop so perfect? And my answer was, go work in a restaurant and have to scoop hundreds of perfect ice cream scoops.
Really? That, because after you do it 100 times, then you've got it down. You know how to do it.
Yep. Yep.
I thought you were going to say some kind of trick, like, what I learned is like I scoop it and then I put it on a platter and then I refreeze it.
I'll do that sometimes.
Yeah, there's all those kinds of little tricks that I think are like, freezing your maple syrup so that when you go to pour it, it's kind of it's a firmer, it's firmer and not so runny.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I love those kind of little tricks.
Yeah, I do too. I do too. And I'm always coming up with new ones. And it's fun. And my one thing is, I do the food always has to be edible at the end. I don't like the glue and the cereal
I
food photography
agree.
tricks.
Yes, I am the same way. I don't like to do things that make. I just think there's enough food waste in this world. I don't want to add to it.
Me neither.
Yes.
I want to eat my food.
Me too, me too. Yes. And we do. That's one of my favorite parts about the photo shoot is I know finally after the photo shoot we're going to eat it.
Yeah. Sometimes I can tell those are the ones where if I'm really excited to eat the food, those are the ones where I don't do a very good job because I'm just rushing through it to get,
Oh my
like,
God.
I find some things are just torture to shoot. So because I like pizza. All I want to do is eat the pizza. I don't want to get the perfect cheese pull. I just want to eat the piece of pizza.
So therefore, it's like, okay, that's good. Let's go on.
That's good enough. That'll do. That'll do.
Yes. There are some foods that, yeah, I totally feel the same way. Like, no matter what, especially pizza. I mean, not only does it look good, but it smells good too.
Mm-hmm.
So it's coming at you from two angles.
Right.
So what are some of the things about food blogging that maybe are surprised about that you love so much?
I mean, we were just talking about the food photography, and I think that was the biggest surprise to me, that I didn't think I was going to like that as much as I did when I started, because at the beginning it was a huge struggle. But I also actually, for food blogging, I find some of the SEO research kind of fun. It can be tedious to implement a lot of it, but I find it really interesting to look around and see what it is that people actually want and what kind of
Yes.
questions they're asking. Because I'm coming at it from such a different angle that I think it's easy when you're working from home full time as a food blogger to get kind of detached isn't the right word, but you don't necessarily have the full perspective of what someone else might actually want. So I find it interesting from a research perspective.
I love that research side of keywords, and I have spreadsheets that go on. I mean, I've got so many recipes, and I could just like, I feel a little bit like, if do you ever read that book? I can't. Is it Silas Marner, where he's like the dad's over there just like counting his gold over and over and over. That's how I
Mm-hmm.
kind of feel like with keywords. It's like I could simply spend the whole day just like on the keywords. I don't even know what I love about them so much, but I do.
It's interesting. It's
Yes.
interesting.
It is. It's very, and like you say, what are the trends? What are people searching for? And how can I work this into my strategy? I don't know. I just enjoy all that. It sounds like you do too.
I do too. And I think there's something that was, I hate to say freeing about it, because in a lot of ways it's been, I think, very restrictive for a lot of us in terms of creativity.
Mm,
However, I was never somebody that really liked the writing side of blogging. I didn't, we think we all have those stories from 5 years ago on our blogs
yeah.
that we're trying to now optimize those posts and maybe
Yeah.
remove the story if it's not relevant to the food. And I never enjoyed that, but I think some people really miss those days, because they really, like, writing was an essential component of food blogging, and I think for some food blogs it is. But for me, it was always all about the recipe, testing it, getting it right, and then getting some beautiful photos. So the SEO step almost gave me permission to abandon something that I already didn't like.
Yes. I feel the same way. I feel a lot like I was kind of struggling to come up with stories. I don't think I have
Mm.
enough interesting things in my life to create stories around food.
Yeah, I don't know what to do with some of them, because I did have a couple
Yes.
great stories, and I don't want to get rid of them.
Oh, I
So
have
I
my
don't
hand
know
up,
what
but
else to do with them.
you can't tell this, but I have my hand up. I want to tell you something because I
Yes.
started putting those in my Instagram related to that post.
Oh.
So like maybe I've got a really cool story about my daughter and I going to do something and it relates to that recipe. And especially since I use CoSchedule, I have the social media sharing at the very bottom of that post. So I just cut that story out of the post itself and copy it down and schedule it as an Instagram post.
Interesting. That's a
I
really good
know.
idea.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just want to make sure I don't lose them, I
I
guess.
know. They're nice stories, right?
They are nice stories, but some of them have absolutely nothing to do with the food. I think
Yes.
I have a grapefruit pie. It's kind of like a key lime pie, but with grapefruit.
Ooh.
And I told a story about when my friend and I got plucked out of the audience at a Flaming Lips concert, and we got to dance on stage with the band dressed in Santa costumes.
Holy cow, that sounds like a blast. Did you get pictures?
Yeah, some other people took pictures and sent them to us. So there's a couple of really blurry pictures on the blog. And it has absolutely nothing to do with the grapefruit pie, but I had no idea what to talk about that day. And I needed to get the post out. And it was just a great excuse to tell the story. And I guess I could have saved it for a Christmas post. But I don't
Yes.
know when else I would have told it. So now it's sitting there with this grapefruit pie. And I've just decided, you know what, that's something that's never, that doesn't need to be optimized. And every now and then I get a snarky comment about, like, you know, cool story, bro. Um, but I don't care. It just,
Yes. Well, I mean, I think Sarah from Sarah Cooks, she
mhm.
does like a weekly post where she talks about things that have been going on in her life. I mean, I guess you could do something like that where you share a story like that.
The stories are all up there. I don't even need to do them anymore. That's,
Yes.
you know, now I don't need to do those. It's just what to do with the old ones.
Yeah,
But I like your
exactly.
Instagram idea.
Yes. And I'm trying to decide, I'm thinking about your Instagram feed. Do you only share food or do you sometimes share personal stories too?
I mostly share food. I've thought about, I'm not opposed to sharing other things. I have gotten personal on there before, but I think I'm one of the few people that doesn't really like Instagram that much. So I forget to go on there and share personal things.
I think it's gotten a little bit better this week. I don't know why, but out of the clear blue, it seems like my home feed has turned into a chronological feed again. So I'm actually seeing posts of
Really?
people I follow.
Well, that's exciting.
I know it's made Instagram a lot more interesting to me this last week. Let me just say it that way.
I'll have to go check it out again. Yeah, because I felt like I was seeing the same five people over and
Oh,
over again,
me
and
too.
it got more fun when I started following funny cat accounts and the kids from Stranger Things, and you know, I just started mixing it up with weird things in my feed. But then those were the ones I was looking forward to. But then it would be that and the same five food blogger friends over and over again, and you
Yeah. And
know,
it's like if you accidentally click like on something, then it's like that's all you would see. So then it
mm-hmm.
may be to the point where I didn't want to click like on anything because like if it's my friend who did something or a distant cousin or something, it's like, it's great, but I don't want to constantly see that in my feed. And so I think it's gotten a little bit better. I don't know what they did, but
Oh, I'll have to
hopefully it
try it again.
sticks. Because I'm with you. I have really struggled with Instagram. There are times that I feel like I've got it figured out and it's great. Other times I bet, like I say, I like it now because I can go to my home feed and I can actually see a big variety and different things that people are posting. So I like that.
Mm.
I kind of like it when people share their personal stories, but I know there are a lot of accounts that don't do any. They just do food. And I mean, it's fine too. I mean, it's nice to see the mixture, but
I think my issue is that I don't love that every personal story has to have a photo going with it. I remember one time I don't remember what I was talking about, but it was personal. And I put a photo of tomatoes up because I didn't know what to post. I don't usually post pictures of myself.
yes,
And so I think that's something I like about Twitter is it's you know you can it's multimedia.
it is.
You can just say what's on your mind. You
Yeah.
can show photos, you can show videos, you can show funny gifs, you can retweet other people. Like everybody thinks Twitter is useless, and it is for blog traffic, but for me it's just a place to go and be ridiculous.
Yeah, I totally agree. I like that from Twitter's perspective as well. Like it seems like I could go up there and just put two sentences up and walk away from it. It's good.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I like that too. Of course, there are some people who get better engagement than others on Twitter, but yeah, I find Twitter to be, let me just say it this way, it feels more intuitive to me. Like I kind of understand what's going on there. I don't get in. I think that's what I don't like about Instagram is I don't really understand what's going on here.
Yeah, yeah, and I've kind of come to terms with the fact that with most of these platforms, I think you get back what you put into it.
Mm,
So I feel
right.
like if I really put a lot of effort into Instagram, I'd probably
Yeah, that's true.
get more out of it. But I go where I'm having fun, and so I put more effort in, so I get more engagement, and
Yes.
that's usually Twitter, my Facebook group, and then the Facebook feed just to see my friends and family because that's where my friends and family are.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yes, I love that. Speaking of Facebook, I'm just going to change directions here. And one of the reasons that I think we're talking today is that we were both commenting on, in fact, I think it was on Twitter, direct message, we were chatting about this. Now that I think about it. But there was a thread in a Facebook group that we're both in that was about a really important topic, which I don't think, and I think you pointed this out, that it's not really talked about a lot. And this might be a great opportunity to go into this because it's probably something a lot of people are dealing with, and having this kind of conversation about it would be helpful. And that is, it was about mental health and blogging. And in fact, it was really kind of heart wrenching to see how many people, first of all, they seemed relieved to be able to talk about it and to see that other people were also having some of these same issues. And I don't know, I'm curious if when you saw that feed, did that impact you the same way?
It impacted me a lot. I've come to realize late last year just that there were really, which I think that was around, the thread was late last year, maybe late summer. There's really very little out there for people to, there aren't a lot of resources available, and seeing how many people were looking for support and were relieved when they found it, just it was very eye-opening to me, because I've struggled with depression for my entire life, and it's I think a lot of times it feels like we're all kind of alone on an island and nobody really talks about it.
Yes. It's really a sad part. It's almost like there's a stigma related to mental health that causes us to not, to think, oh, like I can't talk about this. This would be bad.
Mm-hmm.
I can speak personally from my perspective that my brother was schizophrenic and also bipolar and ended up committing suicide. And, I just experienced that firsthand, the struggles that my family went through to try to get him help and this was quite a long time ago. So there were really very, very few resources to help somebody like that other than like having them committed or whatever. But now, I mean, it's interesting to me because I feel like we're in this area where there are more resources about it, but it still feels a little bit like there's some taboo around talking about it.
Oh, there's definitely a taboo about talking about it. When I can't remember how long ago it was. It was probably 6 years ago. It was 7 years ago. It was at some point when I was really starting to, grow the site into something larger. And I remember I wanted to talk about depression on the blog. And I remember being told by several people, several very well-meaning friends, that they thought that I should not talk about it because it could hurt my ability to get clients, to get more,
Hmm.
to get work, to get sponsored work. And so I kind of just, I felt a little offended, but I just decided they were probably right, and I didn't talk about it. But, why? It's a disease. Why shouldn't I talk about it?
Right.
It's not any different than having diabetes.
Exactly. That's how I feel too. That, especially when you start talking about the resources available. I mean, like for somebody that needs medication, it's a chemical imbalance. It is absolutely no different to me in my mind than somebody who has diabetes and needs to, they have a chemical imbalance as well. They take medicine and then they're better.
Right. Right. And we don't tell them not to talk about it.
Yeah, exactly. In fact, if anything, I mean, there are diabetes groups for people who are recently diagnosed or even long term, so that I think there's studies that show that they do better when they are able to get together and talk to other people about it. So, yeah, we don't tell them not to talk about that. That's a good point.
Yeah.
I think running a blog is such challenging work, both physically and mentally, especially when it comes to food blogging. And I just think I can't imagine the difficulty of doing that with a mental health condition as well. I think it must be very challenging.
It is very challenging. And I think it's hard because it can really hold me back sometimes in a lot of ways, with my energy level and my ability to focus. I get very bad anxiety, and these are things that slow me down. And I see other people performing, other food bloggers, at this incredible pace and
Yeah.
getting, you know, 4 posts out per week, all with new video, with everything. They're doing everything themselves. They have 3 children. And I'm like, how are you doing this? I was able to get 4 posts out per week sometimes, but not with video. And at a certain point, I had to stop comparing myself to other people because some other people can do whether or not it's related to depression, that pace doesn't work for me, and that pace can spiral me into a place that's not so good. And I have to
Mm.
do something that feels organic to me.
Oh, that's so true. I think about that myself too. That it's so easy to be comparing ourselves to other people, whether it's the success that they're having or the actually the output that they're doing, and it can wreak havoc in my
Mm-hmm.
life. Let me tell you that.
Yep, I get it.
I think we're going to be talking today about this, the mental health side of how it impacts us as food bloggers. And like I say, I was just impressed by that feed, by the pure number of people that were dealing with things like anxiety, bipolar. There were all kinds of conditions being mentioned in there. And it seemed to me like what I saw a lot of was issues related to isolation. Isolation seemed to be a big part of, and I think these are, when we were talking about this, I think these are things that everybody can experience. I wonder if they're just heightened for people with mental health. Would you agree with that?
I think everybody absolutely experiences isolation. If you work from home, everybody needs to get out and take care of themselves and do the self care. But I think when you have, whether it's just regular depression or bipolar disorder or anxiety disorder, it can add a whole new level, the isolation. And, people will say, just go take a walk, and sometimes it's very hard to even do that if I'm in a not so good place.
Right, right, exactly. Because I know somebody who had both bipolar who said that her blood just felt like lead going through her system. So the idea of going for a walk would nearly be impossible.
Right. Right. No, I also have bipolar. I have what's known as bipolar 2 disorder. And the word that I came up with at one point for myself was I feel paralyzed. I
Mm.
literally feel like I can't move. Like these things that shouldn't even be that hard, these little baby steps, going into the kitchen and just baking the cookies and then shooting the cookies or writing the blog post. I could have 10 blog posts completely shot and edited and ready to go. But all I have to do is upload them to WordPress. And if I'm feeling this paralysis, I can't do it. And I think you have to have lived that and experienced that to know that that is actually, it feels very real in the moment. And I'm very hard on myself when it happens, because I'll tell myself I'm just being lazy. And look
Mm.
at all these other people that are doing all this work, and I'm just sitting here on the couch not moving. I'm being lazy, but that's not what it is.
Wow. That is, I mean, that, especially when you live in a society like this one that is so, to me, it seems very productivity oriented. I can
Mm-hmm.
see where that stigma is even worse then.
Oh, it can be soul crushing.
Yeah.
Um, Negative self talk is something that I'm constantly working on, and I would never talk to a friend the way I talk to myself.
I do that as well. I find myself, I can just, like we were just talking about earlier with the, things may be moving along great. And then I get a negative comment about a particular recipe. And it's like, everything is for naught at that point. It's like, I'm not just a loser in one area. I'm a loser everywhere.
Mm.
Yeah. So that negative self-talk, it's very debilitating, and I don't know. It's quite a struggle to work your way through that. And mindset has been a big, issue, or something I've been trying to work on for myself. And but again, I feel like we're kind of dancing around this area where some of these things I think are things we all have. We all deal with isolation. We all deal with, you know, negative talk, and then some things that we can do to work around that. But like we have just said, some of this is clinical diagnosis and requires medicine and seeing, either a therapist or a psychiatrist, or it's really important, I think, to distinguish that all of this is important.
Yes, I agree. I think that everybody deals with these things on some level, but I think that there comes a time when people do need to go and speak with a doctor and look into
Yeah.
medication and not worry about stigma. I think there's a lot of people out there who think there's negative stigma associated with taking medication and it means you're weak. And it's not. There's nothing. I'm going to use the diabetes example again. Why try to suffer through it and tough it out when there's medication available that can make your life so much better.
Right. Right.
Um, I went on medicine for the first time probably when I was in early middle school, late elementary school, but it wasn't until my mid-20s that I got diagnosed with bipolar 2 disorder, and I was put on mood stabilizers instead of antidepressants. And I always say that I feel like my life began at 25.
Wow.
That was being on the right medication can completely change your life.
Can you tell me what the difference is between bipolar and bipolar 2?
Oh, sure. So most people, I'm always amazed how many people haven't heard of bipolar 2 disorder. And I think that's because everybody just hears about bipolar. It's sort of everyone's favorite armchair diagnosis right now. They love to use it as a plot point in movies and TV shows.
Yeah.
And, we've seen some celebrity meltdowns and they're publicly diagnosed with bipolar. So bipolar, there's actually different levels of bipolar disorder. And the one that most people are aware of that gets the most kind of notoriety, I guess, is bipolar 1. And that's really just bipolar disorder. But if you have bipolar disorder, you're if people have regular clinical depression, they're going to have downs. And with bipolar disorder, it's almost kind of like a seesaw. You're going to have bad downs, but you're also going to have highs where that's called mania. And it's where you have a lot of energy and there can be a lot of bad things about it, but there can also be some really good, a lot of creative people find
Yes.
their
I've seen
best
that.
moments during the mania.
Right.
And then bipolar 2, which is what I have, is the seesaw doesn't swing as far in each direction. So the lows aren't as low and the highs aren't as high. So the mania that I get is actually called hypomania. And there are actual technical ways that they, conditions for diagnosing either hypomania or mania, but mania is much more extreme. That, if you hear stories about someone having a messiah complex or jumping off a roof or shaving their head or doing something really, really extreme, that might be a regular manic episode. And I feel like I have to be careful what I say because I don't, just because people have bipolar 1 doesn't mean they're going to do any of those things.
Right.
But hypomania, I might work nonstop for 12 hours, a mile a minute, and have all of these amazing ideas and, go on a shopping spree, but I always try to keep it within reason.
Right. Yeah, I only chuckled when you say that because was definitely my brother who was, I think the schizophrenic side of him and the manic side would come together at times. And it was definitely had that, did you say a messiah complex?
Messiah complex.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. He definitely, he was out there at times. I mean, our last name is McMillan. And so at the time there were all these signs around town that was like ARM, which was allergy relief medicine, but that was in small prints, but his name was those were his initials. So he just assumed that everybody was worshiping him. So,
wow.
Yeah. But, I think I love that what you're describing. I didn't even realize there were all these levels. And the other thing that's so great today is there are so many more medications that are available for people. I think that's really important too.
Mm-hmm. There's a lot of different medications. New medications are coming out all the time, and they can really make a huge difference. And if you're going through a hard time, my little public service announcement, go talk to your doctor.
Yes.
Because these medicines can really, I'm repeating myself, but they can make a huge difference.
No, it's true. And like I say, I think the fact that there are so many more meds available, I think I think there's a stigma about the medicine as well. And that some of it, like my brother was on lithium, which makes you gain weight, it makes you really dull. It's there's a stigma around all of that. But
Mhm.
I think that medicine today is it's so much better. You can actually live a very great life and be energetic and like you said, you feel like your life started when you went on the medicine.
Yeah, and I got lucky because once I got a proper diagnosis when I was
Yes.
25, I was put on a medication called Lamictal, which made such a huge difference for me. But I think a lot of people aren't so lucky right out of the gate, and they have to try different types of medications and different dosages to see what works properly. And it's not always an instant fix. And I think a lot of people, they go in already having kind of a negative stigma associated with medication, and they try something and it doesn't work, or it maybe even makes them feel worse. And
Mm,
then they go, oh, that didn't work, I'm done, instead of saying, maybe I need to try something else.
right. Exactly. To keep pushing and keep trying, yeah, is important. I totally agree with that. And and dosage too. Dosage can have a big impact.
Huge impact. I take a very high dosage of Lamictal. I take 400 milligrams a day, and it doesn't work nearly as well if I take 300 milligrams. We've experimented,
Wow.
and the generic doesn't work for me very well at all. I have to take the brands. If they tell you that they're the same with the generics and the brands, I
You
they're
disagree.
wrong. I
Yes.
disagree strongly.
Yes. So I think what we're saying here is that this is a challenging career, food blogging is. If you mentioned to somebody on the street that you're a food blogger, their probably first impression is, wow, that's got to be a lot of fun. But in reality, it's a lot of work. It's highly complicated, it's technical, it's also challenging towards an individual. You have to really believe in yourself and push back against adversity. And I think some of the things we're going to talk about today about ways you can be your best even as you face difficulties in your life can be said for people who don't have a diagnosis of mental health, or people who do. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely.
Okay, good. I just say that because I never ever want to sound like I'm downplaying, like, oh, like we've said before, just go for a walk and things will be better. But I think there are some things that we can do for our mental health to help us be our best in a career that is highly challenging and problematic at times when, like you're talking about, comparison is that's probably one of the biggest ones that we see other people doing, like you say, 4 or 5 blog posts a week. They're brand new. They've got video, they've got kids, they've got all these
Mm-hmm.
things. And it's so easy to start feeling down. And I'm hoping that you and I are here telling people, first of all, you're not alone. If you feel like you're the only one that feels that way, you are not the only one who feels that way. There's help, and there's things that we can all do to help us love this career to the best that we can.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the ones that's really hard for me that I've had some personal experience with recently is the algorithm shifts.
Oh,
I
yes.
think that especially if you have any struggles with mental health, you have to really take care of yourself, because you never know when these things are going to hit. You never know when Google's going to do. You can sort of prepare yourself for, okay, I'm going to be working from home all day. Maybe I should try to schedule a time to speak to a friend. And, maybe I should make sure that I don't compare myself to other bloggers too much. But one of those Google algorithms, can knock us down really quickly when we least expect it. And it kind of takes the wind out of your sail, out of anybody's sail, mental health or not. Those are
Right.
really, really tough.
When you feel like you're doing everything right and all of a sudden your traffic starts to tank, that's depressing. It really is. It's very,
It's really
it
depressing,
makes
and
you
it
feel
can really
distraught.
trigger.
Yes.
Mm,
Yes, it's a trigger. That's very good. You know what? Here's something interesting though. On the flip side, I've had a situation this week where well-known YouTuber. Her boyfriend also is well-known, and he featured one of my recipes. And as a result, luckily he linked to me, and as a result, I've gotten a lot of traffic.
Oh,
I
that's
find
great.
that I have actually found that to be triggering this week because it wasn't something I did. You know what I mean? Like yeah, had this not happened, I would have, my traffic was kind of stagnant and, I've been having some great months. And then all of a sudden February hit and it's like, what's going on here? And then that happened. It didn't feel very good. I don't know how to explain that, but
No, I get it. Food blogging's a roller
it
coaster.
is a roller coaster. Even when good things happen, you can find yourself self-doubting yourself.
Yeah,
I guess it comes
definitely.
down to if it was something that I had done and I had control over and it resulted in more traffic, that would have felt really good to me. But the fact that this guy who's kind of his whole MO is to act kind of like he doesn't know what he's doing in the kitchen and he does all these things and this guy did that and as a result I got more traffic. It felt, I don't know. It didn't feel like I earned it. It felt like I don't know. I don't know how to explain that why it bothered me so much, but
Just got to
um,
celebrate the traffic.
you're right. That's kind of where I've ended up with is that, we have to be happy for the traffic as it comes in. And, I used to work for this boss who was toxic. He was just terrible. And my husband would say to me, you need to not take personally when he tells you something positive or negative. And I sometimes feel like that's how traffic is. It's not about my personal self-worth. It's, you know what I'm saying? In other words, when my traffic is
So
high or my
true.
traffic is low, I'm still the person I am.
But it's really easy to make it about our self worth.
Is it is. It's so true. Yes. Yeah, I think that's what I have a tendency to do. Like I've talked about mindset before where sometimes I think if my mindset or if this internal belief I have is that I'm a loser, I start looking for evidence. And even when my traffic goes up like this situation this week, it still comes down to like you're still a loser because you didn't deserve that. You know what I mean? You didn't do anything to make that happen. So I think that's a mindset thing. It's a growth mindset that I've been working on, trying to improve that.
I've been trying to work on improving it too, so we should keep motivating each other to soldier on with it because I think it's a long-term battle that we both deserve to win.
Yes. I love that. I love that so much. And actually you do read, that's a good point is that isolation can be very, if I sit here with my own thoughts, I don't even tell my husband sometimes I'm having those thoughts, like I'm writing in my journal or whatever. But the second I start talking about it, it gets better. Like talking to you, I talk to my husband and, I don't know, it feels lighter now. Is that interesting?
It makes total sense to me.
Yes. So I think that's kind of an example of where we there are these things that we can do. Like I love to follow Dr. Rhonda Patrick. She's with the site Found My Fitness and she's so smart that it's scary. And she talks a lot about, I think she must have dealt with depression because she has done a lot of her podcast episodes on depression as it relates to exercise and how it's important. Like here we can easily find ourselves on our computers all day long and exercise goes out the door sometimes. Do
Mm-hmm.
you find having some kind of exercise regimen helps?
Oh, it helps so much. There's a local spinning studio that I love, and when I get myself out there regularly, I feel so much better. And we're actually house hunting right now, and looking to move to a place that is a little bit larger because right now I can't have a bike in here, but I want to get the Peloton app, not the actual
Yes.
bike, because you can still have the app even if you don't have that bike.
Yep.
And I want to do those classes because the classes that they have on Peloton are kind of like the ones that I go to at the spin studio. But even if I'm having a bad day or it's raining and dreary or snowy or horrible outside, I could still just get on the bike and get that adrenaline.
Yes.
Makes me feel so much better.
Yeah, there's somebody I follow. I think her name is Robin, but I think she teaches those Peloton classes. I think I follow her on Instagram and she's so inspiring. There's a big part of that. I think getting out and moving and I think it brings that out in me.
Yeah, me too, for sure. I'm exhausted a lot of times after I do it just because I let so much out while I'm exercising, and I just expel so much energy. But it just it's worth it. I wish I could go every day, but that studio is really expensive, and I don't like leaving the house.
Yeah, so let me tell you how my days go. So I'll think, okay, I'm going to exercise when I first get up in the morning. And then, something happens. I'm like, something's on the blog or whatever. And I check my traffic or I check something. The next thing you know, it's like lunchtime. And I think, okay, I'll exercise this afternoon. Oh, that doesn't happen or whatever. And then it all starts again the next day. Do you ever do that?
Oh, I've never done that. I have no idea what you're talking about. Yes, I've done that many times. I find noon is my sweet spot because I tend to get the
Noon.
most work done between first thing in the morning.
So that's what it looks like for you. You get up and you get a lot done in the morning and then you go work out at noon.
Yeah, yeah, that's my preferred way to do it. I like to think that if I have my own bike, maybe I'll work out in the evening sometimes. I don't want to like get in my car and go somewhere when it's dark.
I totally agree. I don't even, what part of the country do you live in?
I live in Maryland, just outside of DC.
Okay. Okay. So yeah, I guess this time of year it's still getting dark pretty early.
Yeah, yeah. I'm kind of done by the end of the day. I
Yeah,
don't,
me too.
I like going out to meet a friend for dinner sounds fantastic. I gotta go when I still have like the early day energy.
Yes. So that's why noon kind of works best for you.
Noon is perfect because I also don't want to waste my first thing energy. Like I have to spend almost every day. I spend at least a couple hours first thing in the morning working, even if it's one of my days off, because I'm just sort of fired up first thing in the morning when I wake up, and that's when I want to get stuff done.
So I think that's another thing I'm hearing you say then is really understanding your, what do they call that? Like biorhythms where, we all
Hmm.
have these clocks, I don't know. But anyway,
Circadian
the
rhythm.
circadian rhythm. Yes. Thank you. Yes.
Hmm.
And I think there are people that just genetically are wired differently. And so knowing where you can get your best work in, I think that's really important.
Yeah, I've been trying to get my workday down actually condensed so that I can relax in the afternoons and not have to work, but it just means that I can't look at social media or any kind of distraction first thing because I have
Yes.
that first part of my day before noon. It's like I have a focus that I just do not have in the afternoon. When the afternoon rolls around, that's when I'm going to have to go to the store and accidentally put on a sneaker and a boot. Yeah, I'm just like not even there.
Yeah.
But first thing in the morning, I can bang out a 1,000 word article without even blinking.
Yes. So knowing your how you work best is so important, and then kind of protecting that. I'm also hearing like, you kind of protect that. You're not going to get on social media in the morning because, well, if you're like me, I think I'm going to go in and do one thing, and the next thing you know, it's like an hour later, and there goes the hour I had devoted. Yes.
That happens some days.
Yes, exactly. I mean, that is kind of a problem with working from home, I think, is like sometimes having all this time requires, like when I'm working for somebody else, I feel like a sense of urgency around that. I have to kind of create that sense of urgency working for
Hmm.
myself. Does that make sense to you?
It makes total sense because I work really well under pressure, which
Yes.
means I torture myself a lot.
Yeah.
I won't do anything that I need to get done, but I'll think about it a lot while I'm doing stuff that isn't the thing.
Yes.
And then when it's like the eve that the thing is due, that's when I do the thing and I'm really stressed out. But like, that's when I get my best work done.
I know. It's like the genius is like, tapped into and okay, it's done and but you like you say though, you've kind of been percolating on it. So you really have a good idea of what you want to do.
Yeah, I've been percolating on the fact that I haven't been doing it.
And then feeling kind of guilty about it too, right? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, the negative self talk.
Then the cycle all
Why
repeats
aren't you
itself.
doing the thing? Why aren't you doing the thing? You could be doing the thing right now. Instead, you're on Facebook.
Yes, exactly.
You're dumb.
You're dumb. Is that what you just said?
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Your self talk sounds like my self talk. I think it's probably more prevalent than we realize. I think a lot of people have to deal with this.
Absolutely.
Yes. And especially, working from home and, like I said, being kind of isolated from other people. I mean, one thing I want to talk about today is the fact that you're building a resource to help other bloggers that are dealing with things like depression. I was wondering if you could talk about that.
I am. I went through a really, really bad spell during Q4, and I felt like I couldn't work. I was just having kind of that nonstop feeling of paralysis, and I just stopped blogging. And I felt like that I wanted to find some other resources out there to help me, just talking about sort of how to deal with being a full-time freelancer blogger with depression. And I couldn't find anything. I looked and there wasn't anything. And so I decided to make something. And actually, so I made a website, and it's called Just One Post. It's justonepost.net. And I really made it for myself. But the whole time I was working on it, I thought, maybe when this is all done, maybe it'll help some other people as well. And it's just a place where I can go to sort of, I tried to design something that looked very calm and felt very calm, at least to me, and that had a lot of resources, videos that I could watch, things that I could read, blog posts that just talked about dealing with depression and blogging. And then also that would help create a backup system for these times when I feel like I can't work. And I haven't really mastered implementing it yet, but I've sort of created this whole roadmap to how to get yourself ready for a depressive episode, so that if, when the stuff hits the fan, you are ready and your blog can keep operating as if you're still there, even if you're not there.
I love that. So it sounds a little bit like what we were talking about earlier, where you've got these troubleshooting tips to get through a recipe. It's almost like, what are some troubleshooting things that can help me get through a depressive episode?
Exactly. That's exactly what it is.
I love that because I mean, I think I can't say that I have depression, but I can say that I do have these, what I would call triggered moments. And I say this especially when it comes to like when Sean and I were first married, that some things would happen that would trigger me, and I would just be like, unable to pull myself out of a way of thinking. And it would take us weeks to get through something like that. And now we get it down to minutes. We can get through something very quickly. But all I'm trying to say is, like, I noticed that when I was in those moments where I was kind of triggered into believing something, I could not pull myself out of that. I had to, it either took time or, but I think having some resources that could, maybe you ask yourself a series of questions, or you do a few things that I think that's just brilliant.
I'm pleased with it. Working on it actually really helped me also lift out of the depression that I was in. So it really sort of gave me something to throw myself to. I was able to throw myself into it completely and feel better for it. And now I've actually got several people contributing to it as well, because I wanted to have a blog section where I talked about various topics, but I felt like if it was just me, it was going to be a little bit like an echo chamber.
Yeah.
So I've got a couple really great people that have stepped forward to help me.
Well, and that kind of addresses that thing about isolation that we've been talking about too, where if you feel like you're the only one dealing with this, it makes it even worse. But to be able to go to some site and not only have resources, but to see other people having this discussion, I think has got to be so helpful.
I hope so. It's helpful for me.
I just think it's interesting that there weren't resources out there already. Maybe it goes to the statement that it's kind of been a taboo topic. You think that's why?
I think that's exactly why. I think people are uncomfortable talking about it. They don't want to make other people uncomfortable. And I mean, it was hard for me to talk about it at first, because I had been told
Yeah.
not to talk about it, and I sort of internalized that. But I've realized that if we don't all get together and talk about it, that stigma is never going to go away. So, everybody's got to talk. Everybody's got to, stop feeling ashamed about it.
Is there an opportunity on this blog for people to share their own stories, or they can, I guess, comment at least leave comments?
Both, absolutely. I would love to have more people contributing, and people can contribute anonymously if they want to.
Oh,
It's really just, I'd love to have a place for as many voices that want to be heard as possible, you know.
I love that. And so they can share kind of what they've been going through and maybe things that have helped them along the way.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
yeah,
love that. Or even if
exactly.
it's not about help, if you just, even if it's not about getting through it, it's really more about just being able to have some safe space where you can talk.
Yeah, sometimes you just have to be in it.
Yes.
I've found that when I try to push myself to get better, it's kind of like trying to, it's like pushing, it's like swimming against a wave instead of riding it. And sometimes you just sort of have to go with the depression and live in it and be in it and say, it's okay. I'm not going to get any work done right now. I'm just going to have to, this is just how things are. And then as soon as you sort of truly come to terms with that, then you get better a little faster than you might have if you kept going, no, I need to solve this. I need to fix this. I need to feel better. What can I do to feel better immediately?
Oh, it's like in some ways the best self-care in that situation is just to have some space and give yourself some grace, I guess, is the way I would think about that.
Exactly.
I mean, I guess I think we're always so busy trying to do the same output as somebody else or to live our lives the way somebody else is living. I mean, I'm always going to diet. I think like, oh, if I eat like this person, then I'm going to lose weight or whatever. Um, I think to me, I start to realize it's not about figuring out what they're doing. I think it's about me learning to honor myself.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah, that's harder. I have to be honest. I really would rather have a formula that I could follow that would just be like, ding, 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 ding. I did it. I'm there. But in reality, this learning to listen to yourself, I think is harder, but it pays bigger rewards in the end.
I think so. I think so. And you get in touch with yourself a little bit. I mean, it sounds cheesy, but if you're listening to yourself instead of fighting with yourself, I think it's just a better place to be in.
Oh, that's so true. And so if that is, for me, like this afternoon, I'm going to go for a walk because it's finally 40 degrees here in Kansas City. So it's just nice to be outside when it's cloudy, but it's kind of a little bit brighter out than, maybe it's sunshine that, you need or whatever. Yeah. I think understanding yourself and knowing that for me, that's partly journaling. I also find like meditation is really helpful as well. And I'm not saying I always do those things, but I feel like when I do those things, my game is a little bit more consistent. Let me say it that way.
I've been wanting to try meditation, and for some reason, I'm so resistant to actually doing it. I know that I would feel better if I did it. I don't know why starting is so difficult.
Yeah, we listened to the Sam Harris podcast. I don't know if you've heard of his podcast.
Mm-mm.
I can't think of the name of it right now, but he has I guess he's done some really huge meditation retreats in his life and is pretty big on all that. And it's called Making Sense is his podcast. And he has an app now. And so we just started doing his meditation process. So I'll tell you in a month or so what I think about it.
Okay.
But I know Headspace is another one. I mean, it really is in some ways just about sitting down and just giving your mind a break. And I have actually read that there are studies that show that people who think less live longer. Isn't that crazy to think about?
Oh, wow.
Yes. And not just live longer, live better longer. I mean, nobody wants to live to be 102 if we're just going to be like a blob. But if it's like a health span is what I've heard people talking about.
That's so
So,
interesting.
isn't
I
it?
kind of I kind of want to just go to a meditation retreat and force myself to sit in silence for 3 days and just like dive into it, because I'll try to sit for 20 minutes and it's hard.
It
It's really
is.
hard.
I don't know if I could get through something like that. I talk so much. I can't imagine being able to do a weekend.
But then you don't have a choice. You're
Yeah.
there.
Well, this Sam Harris, he was recently on the Kevin Rose podcast, and he was talking about how he has done some of those retreats where it's like a weekend where you don't, or a week maybe, that you don't talk. And he did say that the one that he went to that he liked the most, I thought that's what he said, was where in every evening they would have an interview session with a counselor that or maybe the word counselor isn't the right word, but it's somebody who was there at the camp that you could share your thoughts with that person about that day, and then you move on to not talking the next day. I thought that was kind of nice because that would help you get some things out, you know?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. That sounds interesting.
But I have a friend who did that, and she said it was very empowering and very helpful and life changing. So you never
It
know.
sounds absolutely terrifying, but I
It
like to
does.
think maybe it would be all those things too.
Well, it's kind of like what we were saying before we hit record. Um, we were talking about the concept of being comfortable, and I was listening to the Rich Roll podcast where he was talking to Dr. David Sinclair about. Dr. David Sinclair was talking about how it's important to physically be uncomfortable. Like I think he was talking about hunger, cold, and heat, that we need to expose ourselves to being hungry sometimes, being cold sometimes, and being too hot sometimes. And those are release, I don't know, I think it was proteins or some kind of molecules in our body that help us live healthier longer. And you and I were kind of in agreement that emotionally, or, there's some things that we can do to challenge ourselves to not be so comfortable emotionally as well. And so maybe a retreat like that would be one of those things.
That is definitely a step outside your comfort zone kind of thing.
Yes. Yeah. Sometimes I mean, I think that's kind of another challenge of being a food blogger and working from home is like we are not faced with those uncomfortable situations as much. So we have to kind of find them for ourselves.
Yeah, yeah, because it's really easy to not push all the time, and
Yes.
not that it's good to push all the time, but I like the idea of getting comfortable with stepping outside of our comfort zone.
I like the irony of that. That's good. Getting
Yeah.
comfortable with being uncomfortable.
Getting
Yes.
comfortable. I feel like that could make so many things so much more meaningful.
Oh, it's so true. Another thing Sam Harris said in this interview with Kevin Rose, which really left an impact on me, is like we don't know when is the last time that we're going to be doing something. He gave an example of skiing. He went snow skiing with his family, and it was like 10 years ago, and he experienced that, and it was over. And now he's beginning to wonder if that was possibly the last time he's ever going to be snow skiing. And his point was, we can do that with all parts of our lives. Like, is this, I guess it's really about appreciation, learning to appreciate things by having this realization that this could be the last time I ever do this. This is a beautiful sunset. Is this the last one I'm going to see or whatever? We don't
Oh,
know.
wow, that's interesting. I do that every time I come back from an overseas trip.
Oh,
Is that the last
yes.
time I'm ever going to see that place? I hope not.
Right. And how powerful how that feels, it's a
It's
powerful
so
thing, I think.
powerful. I've never thought about applying that to every single day.
Yeah, I think the concept there is just to find some way of feeling appreciation and gratitude, even for the simple things.
I'm always trying to work on that. I wrote down that podcast so I can
Yeah,
listen
it's
to it.
Kevin Rose. It's a pretty good. He doesn't do like weekly or anything like that. I think he just does them as interesting guests comes his way. I think he's a former. I don't know, angel investor, one of those. Like
I
maybe was
remember him.
really big in the tech boom. Do you know who he is?
I actually do. I actually do back from my IT days.
Oh, of course, exactly right. Yes, I think he's a big tech guy. So, uh,
Yeah.
I think people like that probably look at things differently, and he has interesting questions. That's all I'm trying to say. He's pretty good.
I can't wait to check it out.
Yeah, but I had a yoga teacher who once said that when we were in a yoga position where things were starting to get challenging, and she actually said, if you're feeling not bad pain, but if you're feeling some discomfort in your legs right now, take a moment to appreciate that because there are people in this world right now who would do anything to feel that because they've lost the ability to walk and
Mm.
they don't have feeling in their legs. And I don't know. I think there is some truth to that. That's easy to take things for granted, and to find some place of appreciation is good too,
It's really powerful.
isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's very powerful. And, even just our ability to walk is a privilege. It's not a right. And I have a sister who had to have a leg amputated because of a situation she had. And so it came out of the clear blue where nobody was expecting that. And it made me, think about that even more, how much we can take for granted, even just this ability just to walk, go for a walk. I don't know. Like I'm so glad we're having this conversation because now I'm going to go for a walk this afternoon and I'm just going to be so grateful for it rather than like going, oh, I have to do this. So I would love to hear a little bit about your daily life because it sounds to me like you've got a lot going on because I know you've got your blog, Savory Simple, I'm sorry. And you have this blog for just
Just
one
one
post
post.
where you talk about depression and blogging, but I also think you're working on a news site as well. Is that right?
I sure am. I'm crazy.
Ambitious.
I am working on a new site called Easy Sous Vide Recipes.
I
And
love it.
I think the name is pretty straightforward.
Yep.
I like that that's something that people might type directly into Google. They're looking for easy sous vide recipes. So
Yes.
that was the name that I went with. And it is easy sous vide recipes. I feel like niche blogs have a lot of potential just because there's just so much. Savory Simple is not in any one niche really. So I feel like I'm competing with so many other people. And I liked the idea of trying to start something separate where maybe it would be a little easier to get some of that Google authority.
Yes. Oh, that's a
So
great idea. And sous vide is a huge topic right now.
it's a huge topic and it's so much fun. It's so much fun. So come check it out for new recipes. It's might still be a little bit of a hot mess if you come anytime soon, but I'm working on it.
Well, and I kind of think that it fits to me what if I have this image of you and your cooking, it seems to me like sous vide would probably be something that you love.
Yeah. In some ways I hate the word perfectionist, but I have qualities of being a perfectionist, and the sous vide takes all of the mystery out of cooking. I mean, if you are entertaining a group of people or you're just buying expensive meat, or vegetables even, it cooks some of the best carrots I've ever had in my life.
Wow.
And you can make all kinds of things in it that people don't even consider. So, and it makes them perfectly. It takes all of the, it's the perfect tool for the anxious chef like me.
The anxious perfectionist chef, right?
Yeah, that wants to get it exactly right every time. So I know that, if I cook a hamburger, it's going to come out just medium rare. If I cook carrots, they're going to have just the right amount of toothsome bite to them. It's so much fun.
Ah, that's great. I'm so excited to see your blog when it comes out. And honestly, I have to be honest, I'm kind of jealous because for you and I who have had blogs going on for a long time, and anybody who's out there that's had a blog for a long time may feel this as well, that it's like I kind of think there'd be times I'd like to start over because I could know exactly what to do right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
There's something very liberating about that, going in with a clean slate,
Yes.
not worrying. Like, I feel like my Savory Simple database on WordPress has been there for 10 years, and it must be so corrupt with all of the plugins that have been installed and uninstalled
Yes.
and leftover code. I know that stuff is in there as a former IT person, and it drives me crazy.
Yeah.
And so, like, clean slate, knowing exactly how I want to format the posts, how I want to organize everything. It's hard to make time for everything,
Yeah.
but I have to say it's very exciting to start over in some ways. Like, I'm not starting over because I'm still doing the other site, but it's fun.
Yeah.
I recommend it.
And do you feel like, again, this is a question for somebody who's been blogging for a long time. I feel like it can be hard to keep your motivation going at times. And do you feel like these two new projects that you've got going have I could just imagine they could put a fire in your belly and you're back feeling inspired again. And that actually, bleeds over and helps your older site too. Is that right?
It does. It does. It's a little bit of a balancing act because I get really excited about very specific things, and that's all I want to do. So I just have
Yeah.
to make sure that I don't forget to do my other sites.
Yes.
So coming up with that balance, I have to, pay attention to my calendar and make sure everything gets the time that it deserves. But it definitely sparks excitement.
I love that. I was going to actually ask you that. Are there tricks that you incorporate in your day to help you? I mean, I heard you talk about your calendar. For me, it's my spreadsheets, and those kinds of things help me. Like even if I have an off day, if I can at least just focus on those kinds of things, do you find that have you have some tricks like that that help you?
The one that helps me the most is probably a website and an app called Trello.
Yeah.
And it's just lists that you can it's a whole different series of lists that you can create, but you can reorganize them. You can make checklists within list items. So with the way that my mind works, it really helps me keep going, because also if I have an idea for something I don't want to forget, I can dump it right in there, and then I can have a board for each one of the sites.
Oh, that's great. So then I don't know about you, but like if I don't look at a list of something that I can like, I can actually live in this imaginary happy world where I've got everything caught up. Then I go back to my list. I'm like, oh my God, I got so much to do.
Oh no.
Yeah.
Yeah, when I'm being really organized about things, what I like to do is actually make the Trello lists and then pull those items off of the list and put them into my Google Calendar. But I don't often take the time to do that.
Yes.
But when I do that and I say from 1 to 2 p.m., I am doing this. And then from 2 to 3 p.m., I'm doing this. And then those are the items on the checklist. Those are the to-do list items are actually moved to my physical calendar and scratched off the list. That keeps me very organized. But I would say I only do that about yeah, 10% of the time.
Yeah. Yes. It feels really good when you're that 10% though, right? Like that
Oh,
feels,
yeah,
feels great. But the rest of the time it's like,
totally.
okay, I mean, it's real life, right? Like we're trying to live life as it's like I've heard people talk about we're building the plane as we're flying, it's kind of like that
Mhm.
analogy. We're trying to live life and get through it while at the same time doing all these things.
The list will get it done most of the time.
Yes, exactly. As long as it's on the
Just
list, it's
fine.
going to get done. Yes.
Mhm.
Do you do everything yourself, Jennifer, or do you hire help?
Oh, I have help. I couldn't do things without help. um, I Yeah, I've got a tech person, Robin, who's amazing, who handles a lot of the back end on my site. And then I've also, one day a week, I have a kitchen assistant come in, and
Nice.
that's the day when I get almost, not all, but a lot of I'd say 75% of the cooking and shooting done for the blog, because I'll have her behind me doing mise en place prep, doing dishes, running to the grocery store if I've run out of something, and then she can come behind me, and also when there's downtime, she can test old recipes or retest ones that we had just done the week prior. And it makes we can easily bang out 5 or 6 recipes in a few hours.
Oh, that's brilliant. I love that. I mean, the kitchen being a catastrophe is one of the things I dread the most about recipe testing. So just knowing that somebody's there to clean it up would be wonderful.
It's amazing. That's the best part of it. Is I'm exhausted at the
Yes.
end of it. I just want to sit down, and the kitchen is spotless.
Oh, that's
Highly
wonderful right there
recommend.
alone. But the idea of also somebody even testing the recipes, that's wonderful too.
Yeah, it's comforting to see that if a second person went behind me and made them, that they still work.
Yeah.
Because I always think that sometimes if there's a typo in there that I think says something else, she'll see it.
Yes.
She might catch it because she's not expecting it. If I think it says 1 tablespoon both times, but it says 1.5 tablespoons or something like that, it's good to, or the oven temperature, I might know that it's supposed to be something else. You ever read
Yes.
things the way that you want them to be instead of the way that they actually are?
Right. And sometimes even like the nutritional information, I've noticed that Like if I have a 15-ounce can listed in, and it calculates it thinking it's 15 cups or something, I don't know. And so just having somebody double check and go, that looks like kind of like a high number of calories for that. This is really helpful.
Mm-hmm.
So there's so much to pay attention to get things just right. So that's wonderful. I love hearing examples of people who, there's a lot of work to do. And so having people that work with you is important, I think.
Yeah, I have a virtual assistant too that does all the social media, and she helps me prep my posts in WordPress. I mean, especially now with the two different food blogs going at once, I don't think you can
Uh-uh.
keep up the pace without help.
Right. Especially with, I think these days, the posts are so technical. There's so much that goes into the writing of them that I think it makes it really harder today.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So much harder.
Yes. So having somebody there that's helping with the writing and the SEO, sorry, social media, that's brilliant. That's great.
Yep, I wish I could hire all of them full time.
I know. I feel the same way. Yeah. So that would be a blast, wouldn't it? I think just the idea of I think it's one of the things I miss about working in the office. It sounds crazy. I think people probably hate meetings the most, but I love sitting around a table with like-minded people that, you're got issues and you're trying to figure these things out and they're all coming up with solutions. I love that.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah. Okay. So if you were talking to somebody today who said they were thinking about starting a food blog, what's one of the tips that you would give them?
Ooh, gosh. Who was thinking about starting a food blog, I think the first tip that I would give them would be to do their research before starting. Don't just dive in there. Look and see how they work. Look at the different, understand what the platform is. Look at the different social media. Think carefully about your name. Make sure. I mean, that's like 20 tips.
Yeah.
But do research. And don't just dive in, spend time figuring out how it works as opposed to making mistakes you're just going to have to correct later.
Right. I love that. That's such good advice. Okay, I have these questions I like to ask at the end of the interview. Are you game?
Sure.
Okay, so tell me about a favorite food of yours.
Cool Ranch Doritos.
I was not expecting that at all.
Well, if you had said, tell me about a couple different foods, I probably would have given you a wider range because I love a whole lot of different things. But that was just the first one that popped into my head because it has so much umami.
Yes,
They
it
have so
does.
much umami,
Yeah.
and I don't eat them very often, but every now and then I treat myself to a bag of Cool Ranch Doritos, and they always make me incredibly happy.
It seems like one of those things that I would have eaten at the pool when I was a kid. And so like Funyuns come to mind that I
Mm.
would always eat those at the pool. And there's something about the chlorine combined with the Funyun that's just like, it's so lovely. So that makes me think of now when you say that, a Cool Ranch Doritos, I think I want to sit by a pool and eat some.
That sounds pretty great. I would do that.
I only wish they would come out with the dairy-free version. That would make me so happy. But
Yeah. You could make them.
that's what I'm thinking. Now that you're talking about that, I'm thinking I could just make my own version of that.
Yeah, I'm forgetting which blog I saw it on, but I actually saw a blog that did homemade Cool Ranch Doritos, and it's been on my list to try that. But I have a feeling it's going to be missing that special something that's
Yes.
probably MSG.
Or some really bad chemical. And it's just not going to be as good, is it?
No, it's not going to have that same that same yum factor.
That yum factor, umami yum factor. Yes, I love it. I love it. That's my favorite answer so far. It's so good. What's the favorite app on your phone?
Marco Polo.
What? I've never heard of that one.
Ooh! I get to talk about a new thing. Okay, Marco Polo it's kind of like you can FaceTime with people, but you can do it instead of having one-on-one conversations. You record on your own time and then people can respond on their own time. And it can be one-on-one conversations or it can be group conversations.
Wow.
So my friend Joanne turned me on to it. And so now I've got several different groups on Marco Polo going, where it's just these ongoing conversations where you can respond immediately, you can watch live, you can talk later. My husband is out of town with his family right now, and he and I can just have an ongoing conversation going. And it's so convenient, I love that app so much.
And it's video?
It's video chat, yeah.
I love that. That is such a great idea because I mean, I'm kind of to this point where talking on the phone is not as enjoyable as it used to be. And so this would be a way of just kind of doing that by video and all of that. That's good.
Yeah, it feels really weird at first. It made me realize what YouTubers must feel like, because you're sort of looking at yourself and you're talking to yourself and it feels really awkward. But the more that you practice with it, the more it feels natural. And now I can just ramble on that thing for a half hour and not even notice.
Oh my God, I love it. I can't wait I'm going to check that one out for sure. I love that one. Okay, do you have time for TV or reading at all? And if you do, what's your favorite?
I don't have a lot of time for that. I always want to make more time for reading, and I never do. I keep thinking I'm going to try audiobooks because I keep hearing people say how great they are.
Yes.
But I do, I have so many shows that I like. I'm very, very picky. I always say that I don't like any TV shows that take place in our reality. They have to take place in an alternate universe. So I like Stranger Things. I like Game of Thrones. I like Legion, Battlestar Galactica. There's nothing. Twin Peaks, the third season of Twin Peaks that came out was one of the best and worst and best things I've ever seen. It was so slow, but so good.
Yeah, I think I know that you're a Game of Thrones because your Twitter handle even kind of is reflective of Game of Thrones, isn't it? Yeah. Did you like the last season of that?
I didn't hate it the way a lot of people did. But when I started watching some different YouTubers talk about why they didn't like it, what they could have done differently, I appreciated that things could have been done differently. But I will say I was entertained. And I've gotten to this place with TV and movies where I don't necessarily care if they're good or bad. I just care if I'm entertained because I have a very short attention span. And I was paying attention the entire season.
Ah, that's a very good point. Yes. That's a great way of analyzing whether the show is good or not, if it keeps your attention. Mm-hmm. Yes. Have you watched Undone on Amazon?
No, but that sounds really familiar.
It's about, it's a girl with mental health issues, but it's really cool the way they filmed it. And there's people have hand drawn over each, what do you call that? Like it's
frame?
Each frame, yes. And so it's been hand drawn over the top of video of, real actors. It's amazing. It's very interesting. Their point was that they could do so much more with that. Like this girl has these kind of otherworldly kind of experiences and they're able to display that sometimes. So it's really good.
I'll have to check that out. That sounds great.
Yeah. It's like 6 or 7 episodes, but they're all really well done. It's really good. It has Bob Odenkirk in it, and I can't think of the other actors, but that's one that he comes to mind from Better Call Saul or...
he's always good.
He is so good, isn't he? Yeah. Yeah. Okay, Jennifer, how can people find you online?
You can find me at savorysimple.net and on all social media. My handle is at savorysimple. It's very simple. And then for Just One Post, if you're interested in checking that out and checking out, there's also a Facebook community that I've started attached to it. Just go to justonepost.net and you can find everything there.
Oh, that's wonderful. Jennifer, thank you so much for sharing your story. I know that was brave and not always easy to do. And I really feel like it's going to have a great message for people. And I personally have gotten so much out of this discussion. So I'm really thankful you took some time to talk with me today.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. This was great.
Thanks to Jennifer Farley for being my guest on today's episode of The Chop Podcast. Learn about the latest in food blogging, including the most recent episodes of The Chop Podcast. How? Go to chop.academy and scroll to the bottom of the page and click subscribe. Thanks to everyone for your valuable support of the Chop podcast. I love hearing from you and connecting with you about food blogging. If you haven't noticed, I think I could talk about food blogging all day. Are you in the same boat? Well, we're in good company then. If something you've heard today strikes a chord or inspires you in some way, please leave a review on iTunes. It's so easy to do right from your podcast app. On the Chop podcast page, simply scroll down to the bottom, and that's where you'll see the review section. And you could just simply click the 5 stars. You don't even have to leave a comment, although, of course, comments are appreciated. I also love hearing from you on Instagram, so be sure to give me a shout out via #ChoppedAcademy or #NamelyMarley there. You inspire me, and I hope today's show was helpful and inspirational to you as well. Thanks for listening, and have a great week.